All right, good morning, everyone. We're here to talk about AI, innovation, and ethics. It's a nice, light topic for the morning. It was either that or solving Israel-Palestine, I guess, so we'll go with AI for now. I'm joined by Justine Bateman and Edward Harris, so thank you both for being here this morning. And
Thanks so much.
I'll cut right to the chase. When it comes to AI's rapid rise in Hollywood, what is your chief ethical concern or concerns, if there are any? And I'll start with you, Justine.
Sure. Just a little background. I don't know if some of you don't know me. I've been in the business for since I was 16 years old, and I have a computer science degree, and I'm a filmmaker now. Started out as an actor, and just kind of started seeing about over a year ago kind of where this was all going. And so to answer your question, first of all, an AI program that is generating video can't do anything on its own. It's wholly dependent on what's being fed into it, and what's being fed into it is 100 years of this industry's output without consent and without compensation to all of those that made it. So, and that's up to then the copyright holders, because much of it was done for hire by all the people that made it. So that in itself is theft. So the ethics of creating these outputs is extremely low, just by nature of how it functions. It's not outputting something on its own without having ingested all of this. I mean, if that were the case, this would be a different situation. But it's wholly dependent on 100 years of work that's been done, and frankly by a lot of people that aren't here to defend themselves or to say anything about it.
So to jump in there real quick, to me it sounds like you're more worried about that than, let's say, in 1990 when computer graphics were just starting to take off, Terminator 2, right? This is something that's much more concerning if you're a creator in Hollywood.
Well, when new tech is brought into the entertainment business, like film itself, sound, television, CGI, like you said, VFX, these are literally tools that people have to learn how to use. And yes, you're going to, you make a lot of films and you're going to replace the people that are doing live performances, perhaps, but they still exist now. But this is something else. This is a wholesale replacement of all those workers and of all that work, and insultingly with the old work itself. So it's, you talk ethically, it's absent of ethics to me. Yeah, it's not a tool, it's a replacement that's a byproduct of past work.
And Edward, you're more focused on the macro issues when it comes to AI. You work with the Department of Defense with your company. But again, if we could just zero in on Hollywood for a moment, like what are some of the main concerns you think we should have in this town over the adoption of AI?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot to talk about there. I actually do agree with Justine's answer as one of the main ethical concerns. Justine obviously has a very unique and powerful perspective because she's got a CS degree, and it's a recent CS degree. It's like, it's not 1990 CS degree.
With
and
paper.
she's, exactly, exactly, not writing your programs on paper and stuff. So like really valuable perspective there, and definitely agree. I think that, from one point of view, the way that industries kind of refresh themselves and the economy grows is like jobs get obsoleted and stuff. But yeah, it is a little different when you can kind of potentially wholesale replace an industry. I would say that I have another concern, which kind of ties into, again, our background. We work in national security, like the intersection of AI and national security, kind of large-scale risk sets with multiple arms of the government. And that means that we do think a lot about, let's skate to where the puck is going to be. This technology is advancing very rapidly with no end in sight. And so one of the things that I'm potentially concerned about is, ever since the beginning of movies, or really any kind of entertainment, there has been this implied social contract between the filmmaker and the audience, that the person behind the camera, that the person who has Final Cut or whatever, I don't know the lingo so well, so please correct, but that's a human being with a human being's capacities. And one of the risks that I see moving forward is if you have films or other kind of media entertainment that have the capability to adapt rapidly to audience feedback and stimulus and things like that, you can potentially get media that is super stimulative beyond our, social immune system's ability to react to it. And that includes things that are potentially manipulative of people's views. And this is just not something that we as a society are prepared for. So I would say this is not a current concern. Current AI, yes, cannot do this, but potentially future stuff will. And I think that's a genuine concern.
That's a really good point.
Justine, last week you and me were talking. You mentioned the human contract you have between creator and the audience watching. So is that something you think AI poses a threat to? Is that something you're worried about?
No, I think you made a really good point. Beyond even just that human contract, like you said, that some real person is behind this project, but the manipulation, and I want to get into that more about like what they can do with billboards and things like that, where I'm seeing something different, and because there's some tech that they introduced in an airport in Dallas or something. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. But what we, just on the lower level about the human contract, that's why last year, myself, Reed Moreno, Matt Weiner, and some others, we established the Credo 23 stamp. That's sort of an organic stamp for films that tell the audience that no AI was used. Because I was thinking, I'm sure audiences are going to want to know, am I looking at a person? It's not like, sure, they want to be taken for a ride. They want to, visual effects and all this, do they think in Pirates of the Caribbean that guy really did have like an octopus face? No. But, you know what I mean? People want to be taken for a ride like that, but they don't like to be tricked. They don't like to be betrayed. They don't want to feel, and especially not like feeling real human emotions and feeling like they're having empathetic emotions with the character and all this, and then afterwards to find out that was just an AI object. It wasn't even a person. So yeah, that's what the Credo 23 stamp is, and in fact, we have a film festival coming up in March. It's the Credo 23 Film Festival that is no AI is permitted, and not in your marketing material, not in anything you did, no generative AI. And then we are giving all the proceeds to the filmmakers after costs. Because I also thought, and I don't have the answer to this, but if I could create a tunnel through this inferno for real filmmakers that are continuing to not use AI, then what's the financial model, or how are you gonna make a living at this? So I'm like, well, maybe you get money through film festivals, like Coachella pays their artists, like Burning Man pays their artists, like that. But wait, I want to get into this manipulation. So there's, I forget which airport, but I saw a piece where you can take your QR code on your boarding pass. There's like a big screen in the middle of the terminal, and you can scan it, and then your information of your upcoming flight or your connecting flight or whatever will come up on this big screen, and the people are like, can everybody see my information, But no, it's directed only to, I don't know the tech behind it exactly, but it's directed only to you. Like, you can ask the person next to me, can you see this? And they're like, no, they see theirs. Okay. Again, I didn't go into like what the tech was behind this, but the minute I saw that, I was like, they're gonna fucking do that with advertising. I look at a billboard and I see something that is tuned into my whole social media, everybody I follow, blah, blah, blah. You're standing next to me and you'll see a different one.
Yeah, so they're already doing this with advertising. So Meta has, like, you can listen to their earnings calls, basically, and they're like, yeah, so we're rolling out generative AI ads, because that's just a natural extension of, this idea that you make your own creative, right? And Meta, like, figures out where to put it. Why wouldn't Meta just generate not just your own creative, like, and test it against audiences, but generate, the creative for my company targeted at Justine or targeted at, whoever, and it's going to become more effective. It's going to become more targeted. And further along, you can imagine the same thing happening over time, right? This isn't just around the corner, but like to 2-minute shorts, to like increasing episodes, to movies, and historically, like the way that transformations like this occur is technology passes a critical threshold. So, 20 years ago, I remember like buffering, right? Remember like buffering, where you want to watch a video.
Go get a snack while it loads.
Yeah, I'd say you watch a video on the internet and you're just like, you can't really do it, so you just wait, for it to buffer. Young folks in the audience, you can just tune out right now because like you don't know what I'm talking about. There was a transformative moment when fiber networks became high bandwidth enough that you could do 1 second of loading per second of watching. 1 second per second. And that instantly made streaming a viable proposition. And that YouTube, Netflix, like the industry is still like, that has not been completely like felt in the industry yet. It's still reverberating. And you think about that from the standpoint of generative AI. When are we going to get to you generate 1 second of novel film for 1 second of watching time? And then you have a,
Yeah, definitely. I like a year ago, I was like, one of the first things they'll do, they have years of your viewing history. They'll customize films for you, and then people go, babe, it's never going to happen, because they can't copyright it. And I said, hold on a second. What makes you think they're going to try and copyright any of that stuff? It's going to be so disposable. It'll be like a tissue.
Bingo.
Because they can make 40 a day for you.
Bingo.
And then the other thing that we'll lose is this common experience. So most people have seen something like
100%.
Jaws, right? I've seen Jaws, maybe and I saw Jaws a long time ago. I've seen it a few times. Maybe you've just seen Jaws, and we can talk about it, even though it's, the first time I saw it, I was much younger, and so even with the span of time, it's the same film. Of course, studios, whoever owns a copyright, can go and recut it or something. I mean, if you don't have a final cut agreement with the director. But we have we saw the same thing, is what I'm saying.
Yep, 100%.
But what they'll do with bigger blockbusters going forward, if it's not a customized piece for you, I mean, a wholly customized according to your viewing habits, like, you like different types of films and they'll just make that. But rather something that's more of a blockbuster, some film called, Apple Orchard or something, and we all see it. But I'll see a slightly different version than you because it's going to be customized to, they'll tap into everything that if you're not online, it would be far more difficult. Or if you don't have a lot of, if you don't use Amazon, they don't know your opinions or buying habits, that'd be harder. But yeah.
100%. It's like, and we already are seeing the beginnings of this in the media environment, social media, and like all these kind of insular bubbles, and that's working out just great.
Like the comments below, if I look at this, yeah, exactly. If we both look at the same post, I'll see different comments at the top
Exactly.
than you will.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So Edward, you're focused on putting in place guardrails to keep AI in check, for lack of a better way of putting it. When it comes to Hollywood again, so Gavin Newsom a few weeks ago, he signed a few bills that make it where, for instance, if you're going to have an AI likeness of someone, you have to get the family's consent, even if they've been, dead for 50 years. Is that what we're talking about in terms of guardrails, at least for our town? Is that worthwhile, or what do you think there?
Yeah, so this is, my own perspective on this, again, is the national security and kind of large-scale risk perspective. So, this is, we care about this stuff, but it's a little more peripheral for us. I think that in terms of, people's rights to have their AI likenesses, I mean, I just, that sounds like it's a sensible extrapolation of the intent of, laws with respect to people's life rights and stuff. But that's not so much my area. We think more about the physical risk extrapolated over time. But, but yeah, I think it's basically
Justine,
sensible.
what do you think about that? Is that, do we need more of those laws in place, or is that getting a little too overbearing?
Well, first problem is, we do have a problem in California, and I've lived here for a long time, so I can say this. Enforcing the laws is kind of an issue here. So, I can see that being signed in, and I go, okay, well, let's talk about how this is going to be enforced. Couple of giant loopholes. When you make laws like this and have limits like, this is good for 70 years after somebody dies. If I'm reading this, the text of the law right, what you managed to do is codify it, or solidify the legal allowance of using anybody who died before, I think it's 1954. Now, if you didn't have this law, those, the relatives, sorry, I'm missing words right now, but the dead
The next of kin?
sorry, not the heirs are, the estate,
estate,
that's
sure.
it, great. The estate, thank you. The estate could have done something about it, but if I'm a lawyer and I want to use like W.C. Fields or Gandhi or whatever, and these are all, there's a whole collection of very famous people that died before 1954, I can actually use that law to defend my case.
So would this not have, I actually don't know much about this, would this not have been previously permissible by default, or at least ambiguously permissible?
I'm not as familiar with the right to publicity, but that's another law that had been previously protective of
Interesting.
Likeness and stuff.
Huh.
And then the other one, I can tell you more about the No Fakes Act, which is federal, has a gargantuan hole in it, wherein in order to protect the First Amendment, which doesn't seem to be of that great a concern for the last 4 years, ironically, but in order to protect the First Amendment, they say you have to get permission from people and compensation to use their digital likeness, unless it is sports related, because who needs that to be accurate? Biography, because who needs that to be true? Documentary, because who expects that to be true? News, and then of course satire, which we would expect. But those rest of those, so they wouldn't be able to use your image in a fictional, Jaws 8 or whatever, fictional character. But if they want to do your life story, they can generate video of you having lunch with Putin every day, and you can't do anything. You would, now again, a lawyer could use that against you and say, this has been codified now. The legalization of doing that has now been set in stone. I have a law that protects me, and I can do whatever I want. I can make up Michael Jordan, hovering in the air for, 40 seconds when he made that basket. Yeah. But that's not what happened. It seems like it did, but
is there not like a defamatory risk there? Because by the First Amendment, truth is an absolute defense. So if I generate, I'm sorry to pick on you, but if I generate pictures of you having lunch with Putin, and you actually did,
it didn't happen,
safe
everyone,
harbor.
just for the record. I have never been arrested.
All right.
But it's tougher legally if you have laws that exclude.
Yeah,
as
I find that interesting.
Now,
okay.
There isn't a law that, and I mean, not to get into the whole SAG thing, but there's a lot of stuff that's in setting the protections that they did set. The stuff that's excluded now is been set in stone that it's permitted. See what I mean?
Got it. So it's like you're giving safe harbor for some of these cases. Interesting.
If I was a lawyer, I would. That's how I would count it. That's what I would use.
So I wanted to ask you both. Last year, Elon Musk said, and he knows a thing or two about this industry. He co-founded OpenAI. He said we're fast approaching a point where no job is needed. And I wanted to ask whether that's in Hollywood or just everyone out there doing a 9-to-5. Are we ready to grapple with that, where everyone can just go to the beach all day, throw the Frisbee around? And is that a good thing, actually? Is it going to be an issue with meaning of life kind of thing? Not to get too big with it, but should we be worried about that?
That's a big, hairy question. And we think about this a lot. I mean, I was talking to Justine outside, and one of the things that got us into this space was back in 2020, a model called GPT-3 came out. We heard of GPT-4 and all the OpenAI stuff, and just seeing what it could do, combined with reading the paper and seeing where it was headed. It was like grabbing an electrical cable, and it was like, holy crap, what if this continues? And one of the things you're seeing is, there are hundreds of billions of dollars of risk capital that swing on the potential for this to keep going. And those hundreds of billions are being invested by the most knowledgeable entities and companies on the planet in the direction of betting for that. One of our concerns absolutely is, what are the risks that come with that when you have an AI system that can broadly have superhuman capabilities? Will we get there? Can't be sure, but certainly when it comes to risk mitigation, we need to consider that possibility seriously.
And Justine, I'd love to hear what you think too. Is
Yeah,
it something we're
I
worried
think,
about?
you know, all these conversations and all these investment decisions are completely neglecting a gargantuan wild card, and that is human beings and their decisions. Because I think yes, is this like for the business in particular, is it going to burn down the business? Yes. If you just look at corporate architecture, if you have a pipeline of duties from, you know, in our business from the beginning, you know, from inception to release, if you start taking out chunks of duties, maybe the whole marketing department, maybe a camera, maybe then all the actors or half the actors, or the crew doesn't get their days to qualify for insurance because you're only using them for 3 weeks instead of 12 weeks. Whatever it is, the structure will just collapse. It won't be what, you know, I mean, I don't know how many of you have been in the business for a long time, but it won't be what we've enjoyed until, you know, a year ago. I mean, even though we're in this like content era, which
Well, are
kind
we
of screwed
headed
it up, but I think people are gonna start rebelling against part of AI's. One of the elements that's necessary for AI success is to make you and you and you, everybody in here, feel like you can't do it. Feel like you can't write your own email. Shh, just sit down. Just lay down. Just let AI do it for you. And if enough people go like, hey, I don't need this kind of like learned helplessness forced on me. I want to do my own things. I think we're going to see, anyway, I could go on and on about the different things that I think humans are going to do.
Well, I'd like to hear real quick though, do you think we're headed towards a point where it's going to be two tracks where studios like Sony, for instance, James Cameron, they've leaned into AI. On the other hand, you're, for lack of a better word, fighting against it. Are we going to have a two-pronged system going forward here in Hollywood?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe you see that in other industries too. And I'm not fighting against it. I'm saying, hey, this group is going all in on AI. It's like we were all on a railroad track, and now the railroad track is split in two, and one is going, I think, right into a mountain. You know, you want to embrace AI and bring it into this and kind of, like I said, crush the structure of it all. By the way, not to make films better, but to widen the profit margins. If you can make well, I'm getting too high on the number. If you can make $300 million on a film, that instead of it having cost $100 million, it costs you $5.
Totally.
Just to grab numbers, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of these studios and studio heads are beholden to the stock price. If they can make a quarterly call and say, look how much larger our profit margins are, they're going to do it. And yes, I think there's another group, a remnant, if you will, that wants to continue pushing the art of filmmaking. And again, which side makes money? I don't know the answer to that. But the art of filmmaking, I think, is going to continue. And I think we'll see, after this inferno, I think we will see a new genre in the arts, which we haven't seen a new genre in the arts since the 90s of any real significance. And there's been some exceptional work over the last 15 years, but for the most part, the focus has just been on generating volume content, which is not filmmaking.
I got time for one more question, and Edward, I wanted to ask you about a study you guys put out earlier this year, and not to scare everyone while we're walking out the door, but you warned that if we don't have guardrails in place on AI on a macro level, there could be, quote, an extinction level event. Can you expand on that, and should I be, staying up at night worried about this?
Well, in 30 seconds. So this is just kind of a consequence of following that straight line that we were talking about. And again, not 100% sure. There could be any number of reasons why things hit a wall. But right now, there's as far as we can tell, there's no fundamental reason why it should. And so at the risk level, at the national security level, yeah, we need controls around this stuff to prevent things from potentially getting too far. And just one example is this is public, but there has recently been work that showed that these systems can, for example, be supportive in creating chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear type weapons, at least in improving expert ability to do that. This is one of the kind of early risk sets that is starting to occur, and a lot of that stuff is happening kind of in the classified space. As things continue to improve in terms of capabilities, it's going to be increasingly important to make sure that there are controls in place. And that is something we are working on actively across the government with any number of relevant entities. Yeah.
Great.
Well, I mean, that information is out there, so all it's doing is like smashing and slicing and dicing and obeying the prompt.
I'm limited in how much I can say, but you can imagine a system that is able to triangulate classified information from public information.
Right, that's what I mean. Like it's taking stuff that's out there. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is it's not coming up with this stuff on its own.
I mean, again, you have stuff that's behind a classified wall, and potentially you may have a system that can infer that from stuff that is public.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying is not grabbing anything from the universe that we don't already know. It's smashing together information that humans have already published.
It's able to triangulate stuff beyond what has been published. Sorry, potentially.
Well,
Okay, well, on that note, I'll say we are officially out of here. So thank you both, and look forward to doing this again next year maybe. So Edward Harris and Justine Bateman, thank you so much.
Thanks, folks. Thanks, John.